Hello there and welcome back to the DBMS video series. In this video we'll be discussing about the question set 10. Graphically Central College was the only active school in the area during the war season. There were only 15 students in the school. Also there were only 5 teachers and one of them was the principal of the school. The principal decided to add all students' details in a student's attendance marking system so he would be able to mark the attendance after the main morning assembly at once. Think you are a reputed database engineer and the principal requested to make a database while another developer is developing the system. Alright, so we'll have to create a database. So there are only 5 teachers and one of them is the principal of the school and there are 15 students. So the principal decides to add all students together into an attendance marking system so he'll be able to mark the attendance after the main morning assembly. Alright, so let's create the database. So we'll have to create a database as Graphically School and we'll have to insert these data to the tables graphically. Alright, so we'll be using the ER diagram as it is easier than the other method. So I'll be opening MySQL Workbench and then we'll head over to the Models tab and then click on the plus icon and then let's add a diagram. Double click the MyDB and then we'll have to rename it to Graphically School. Just copy it and paste it right here. Alright. Now we'll have to add tables. So we select the table icon and place it within the diagram. So the first table is going to be the student table. Alright, so double click on the table and let's rename it to the student table. So let us see what details we need to enter into this table. Alright, so now let's add the column names for each table. So let's resize the table. So the first column name is going to be the ID and the next is going to be the name and the next birthday. Alright, so we have created the student table. Now we have to create the grade table as well. So let's create a new table and double click it and let's create the grade table. Now let us create the village table. And now let us create the transport table. Alright, we have successfully created the table within the database Graphically Central College. So before we add the data, let's assign some relationships to the tables. So all 3 of these should come to the student table. So we'll be using a one-to-many relationship. So I'll be clicking on the student and then clicking on the transport. And then again we'll be creating another one-to-many relationship between the student and the village table. Likewise, we'll be using another one-to-many relationship between the student and grade. Alright, so we have linked all the tables by using the relationship model. So now what we'll have to do is we'll have to save this database. So let's click on database and then click on forward engineer and then click on next, 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 next and close. So we have successfully created the ER diagram for our database. So let's go ahead and save this model. So I'll be saving it as Graphically School. We'll have to change a few things within these tables. So we have to create as auto increment. So AI stands for auto increment. So village table will also be given the auto increment value. Likewise, the grade table will also be given the auto increment value. And then let's close this and then head over to the database and then click on synchronize model. Alright, so now let's head back to ADSQL and now let's reload the table. Alright, we have our Kebatigo Level School database. So now let's do the main stuff. Let's add each and everything into our database. So I'm going to run it side by side. So first we'll be heading over to the grade table and then we'll be adding the grades first. Alright, we have successfully added the values for the grade table. Next, let's add the values for the village table. Alright, we have successfully added all the data into the village table. So let's head back to the transport table and let's add all the values for that as well. Alright, so we have successfully entered all the main data. So we forgot to create the birthday value as a date. So I'm heading back to the MySQL Workbench and then double clicking the student table, and then I'm going to change the data type for birthday as the date. Alright, so let's head over to database and synchronize the model as well. Now let's reload our table here. Alright, so let's enter the details. So we forgot to enter an auto increment key for the ID. So we'll head back to the MySQL Workbench and head over to the student table and give it an auto increment key. And let's synchronize the model as again. Let's reload it here and let's type in the details. Alright, we have successfully entered all the data into the database management system. So we have a small problem. The student table has grade, village and transportation method as the column names, while we have it as village ID, grade ID and transport ID. So to change this, let's head back to the MySQL Workbench. And within the diagram, let's change a few stuff. Let's close this. And in the student table, I'm going to rename the transport ID as transport and the village ID as village and the grade ID as grade. Next, I'm going to synchronize this model And now let's look at the changes that has happened to our database. Alright, we have successfully changed that as well. So now let's head back to the questions in the PDF. So create a database named Lever School and insert this data to the tables graphically. So we have finished that question. And then after we have created the database, the principal wants to check our database for bugs. So he has given us some scenarios, so we have to read them carefully and write queries to get results. So the first one is we have to select all students who study in grade 6. So we'll have to use the join query. Alright, so let's do it. So we'll have to display the grade, village and the transport as well. So we are heading back to the MySQL and let's write the queries. Alright, so we'll be using the inner join queries to join all three tables with the student table. So I'm going to use the select keyword, select all from. So let's select the database's name. And then let's select the student table. So now we are going to use a new keyword which is called the inner join. So once you use the inner join, all three tables data will be joined into a separate table. So let's have a look at what it does. So first let's type in the queries, inner join. So I'm going to copy the database's name and paste it here. And I'm going to select the transport table and I'm going to use on keyword, and we are going to use the student table and the transport column. So we are going to make it to the transport column. Next we'll be doing the same thing. So I'm going to copy this same query. We'll be joining the Lever Schools, a village table on the student dot village and we are going to select the table village table and the ID. So next we are going to do the same thing, but we are going to change the name of the tables. So next we are going to select the grade and then we'll be selecting the grade here as well. We are selecting the grade column here, not to be mistaken. Oops, it has to be capital. And then we are going to join it with the grade table to the ID column. Now let's have a look on how it works. So you can see that the transportation method for each student is shown and the village is also shown for each student. Next, the grade is also shown for each student. So this is the query we are going to use to select all the students from the table. Since we are able to see the transport ID, village ID and grade ID, I'm going to specify which columns I want to be shown as a result. So I'm going to select the columns. So from the student table I want the name column, and then from the student table I need the birthday, and next I need that's all from the student table. Oops, we forgot to select the ID as well. So let's select the ID also. So from the student table we're going to get the ID column as well. So we're getting the ID, name and the birthday. Next, from the transportation table we'll be taking the transportation method only. We'll be selecting the transport table, and then from that we'll be selecting the transportation method column. And next, from the village table we'll be selecting the village column. And finally, from the grade table we will be selecting only the grade column. And now let's look at our result. So when we run this code we see an error. So the error is from this asterisk mark. So we are specifying each columns and then we are asking it to show all tables. So the database cannot do both together. So let's remove the asterisk mark and run the query again. You can see that we don't have the ID column now, since we have specified which columns we need from the database. Now let's head over to the next question. So we have to select birthdays of the students who come from Padaviya by bus. Alright, so we'll have to use another select query. So we'll have to show all the birthdays who come from Padaviya by bus. So first we'll be removing the student ID column and then the student name column, and we'll be leaving the birthday column. And next we'll be removing the transport column and the village column and the grade column as well. Now let's remove the semicolon at the end, and then we'll be using a where clause, where student, so we'll have to add it within the grady marks, student. So we'll be selecting the village is equals to, so the Padaviya village is equals to 1. So I'm going to select 1 and I'm going to add the semicolon at the end of our query, and let's run it, and you can see the birthdays of the students who are coming from the Padaviya village. And the last question, so we have to select the names of the students who study at grade 9 and come from Mihintale on foot. So we'll be using 3 different queries here. So first we'll have to select the names of the students, and now we'll have to select the student name. So we'll be selecting the name column, and then we will not need the join queries again. So I deleted all the queries, extra queries. So we'll have to select grade 9. So grade 9 students ID are supposed to be 4, and Mihintale village is supposed to be 4, and foot is supposed to be 2, 4, 4, 2. So within the where keyword we'll be using the AND keyword here, and so we'll be selecting the student table, and then we'll be using the village column, and it should be equal to 4. and we'll be using another AND keyword here, and we'll be using student dot, and we're using the grade is equals to 4. So let's recheck our query again. So who study at grade 9, so grade 9 is supposed to be 4, Mihintale is supposed to be 4, and foot is supposed to be 2. So the village is supposed to be 4, and transport is supposed to be 2, and grade is supposed to be 4. So let's see who is there. So we have 2 students, Vatsala Shani and Amarabandhu Rupasingh. So let's see what we went through in this episode on our database video series. So first we created a database named Kepatigo Lever School, and then we entered all of these data graphical. After that we selected all the students who study in grade 6. So we used the inner join query. So first we selected all columns, and then we used the inner join query, and afterwards when we saw the ID appearing within our columns, we selected the main columns without the IDs, which made our table look more clean. And then we selected the birthdays of students who come from Padaviya by bus, and finally we selected the names of the students who study at grade 9 and come from Mihintale on foot. So we use a specific keyword called the AND keyword as well. So thank you for watching this video, and we'll meet in the next video.